Today in my tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful flyaway veil. These veils are timeless and they're perfect for summer weddings, and they're very flirty and adorable. Hi, I'm Dorene Vandermeer. I'm a bridal milliner. I'm sharing all my trade secrets with you, and one of them is how to make a beautiful flyaway veil. All of your supplies are going to be in the description below, so let's just go get started. To make your little flyaway veil, we're going to need some illusion netting. Mine's 108-inch width, and we're going to cut that width down, and then you're going to need a nice yardstick and a rotary cutter. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is the length, and the length will be this way on the bolt, and I'm going to do a 26-inch length. And a flyaway can be, depends on your bride. I would measure a flyaway to her shoulder, and it can go a little bit past the shoulders too. And I'm going to do a 26-inch right here, which will make a nice brush on the shoulder. And I'm using a rotary cutter because we're going to be doing a cut edge on this, and that gives it a nice clean cut edge. I'm going to do a 64-inch width, so this is 108 inches this way, and it's doubled over. So I'm going to cut it at the 32 mark. Okay, now that I've got that nice and cut, and everything's still lined up here, I'm going to create a nice little rounded edge on it. And I don't prefer a big bubble. I'm going to kind of go more this way because when it goes on the comb, the edges can fling out a little bit. So I'm going to cut it more rounded rather than bubbled like this. And I'll show you what I mean. I eyeball it, and I'm going to go around and up like that. So it's a longer curve so that when this gathers, it kind of stays more straight. I mean, you can do it bubbled out. It will kind of have more fling to it on the sides. So it's really up to you and your preference. All right, so I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'll show you the next step on gathering and putting it on a comb. All right, so to start this, we're going to use my special handy dandy fishing line. And this is just 40-pound fishing line. It's the best way to gather any veil. Honestly, you don't break a thread, not once. And so I just put safety pins on both sides, and we're going to start. Make sure you start with the edge that leads to the straight way, not to the curve. I've done that more than once and had to start all over again. And now what we're going to do is we're going to just do a basic 5 width, 5 length zigzag stitch. And the first stitch is always the hardest, and we do lock our stitch when using the fishing line. What we're going to do is we're going to zigzag over the top of the fishing line, and then we're going to gather it real fast. And I do about a 3/4 of an inch salvage here, and I'm going to lock that first stitch in because we're using the fishing line to gather, not the thread. All right, and that first one can be a little bit of a bugger. We're just going to go get it on there, and now we're set. I'm going to give you a little bit to see. As you can see, it's cradling it really nicely. Isn't that great? And how quickly it's going to gather. It's going to blow your mind. And I'm at the end here, but I can just pull like that, get a little bit more of my fishing line and go in. And now what I'm going to do is lock the last stitch. And while it's on the machine, I'm going to pull this all the way, and it is gathered here. And that's not the last thing we're going to do. All right, I'm going to pull it off, and I'm going to cut only the threads. Okay, so it's gathered. Now what we're going to do is we're going to boil this down to a 2-inch comb. And I'm going to just pull this a little bit here so you can see. Here's our gather. And what we're going to do is now I'm going to go back in with it pulled to a 2-inch width there. And we're going to go back into that little ditch there. And we're going to do another zigzag stitch in a 2 width, 2 length. And we're going to go back and forth about 100 times. And what that does is that seals that up and creates a beautiful finish to put on a comb. And before you start, here's the most important thing, because I'm telling you these things because I've done them before and had to start all over. And you see how it's kind of just all like jumbled here like this. What we want to do is get all of these gathers straight this way. Pull that fishing line. Let's lock a stitch real quick. Okay, once you lock your stitch, pull the fishing line, and it's very nice and secure. And then I lift up my foot with the needle down, and I get all of my my gathers straight. So nothing is folded over, nothing is bunched in the back. I can see all the gathers are all going this direction. Now I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to put the foot back down. I'm going to go into that ditch back and forth. And you can keep pulling here, keep making sure your gathers are nice and straight this direction. Keep pulling tight. Now at the end, I kind of straddle it like this, watching my fingers, pulling with my other hand. It's like a partnership here. We're working together. And now we're going to cut the threads again. All right, so we got that down, and I believe we are on the money as far as the 2-inch. I love it. Now, if we weren't, what we can do is we can pull it again and run it one more time through to get that tight 2-inch, or you can actually sew it on here and pull it tight. So I'm not going to release the fishing line yet. So what I'm going to do, however, is I'm going to trim all of this excess seam allowance all the way to the edge of that little zigzag ditch we made. And keeping your fishing line on there, now we're going to put it on a comb. Now when I do a flyaway, I do like the comb to be this direction so it sinks into the hair, and then I do a beading application for the top, which I'll show you here at the table. And the reason I do that is if I do my usual flip application, it does fling out in the back and it doesn't lay flat. What we want this to do is lay nice and flat on the head. Because it's a smaller veil, it's going to be harder to manage. So what we're doing is we're containing the drama. We're going to make this veil go in the direction that we want, which is nice and down by the shoulders of our bride. So I'll meet you at the table and I'll show you the next process. All right, I'm back at the table, and now what we're going to do, we have this all on the fishing line, and we're going to sew it onto the comb. Now before I do, if you remember, I said I don't want these edges to fling out. So if we don't fold these edges over, what will happen is as it's on the bride's head, this edge on both sides will sort of fling out. What we're going to do is we're going to pull those edges over right here, and we're going to make them round over so that edge is facing the front where the bride's face is, and that will make that not fling out. And that's a very simple thing to do before you put your comb on. Get that little edge rolled over, and we're not talking a big roll. I'm not saying like a big bend. I'm more talking a small turn of that top corner, very small, and that helps that edge not to fling out. And you're going to take your invisible thread, and we're going to just do a whip stitch all the way around. I like to move this out a little bit so that it's away, because it does get tangled up. So what we're going to do, if this did not actually boil down to a 2-inch comb, it's not a problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the first stitch, and I'm going to pull this tight, and then you would just gather it up to the comb. And then when we get to this other corner, make sure we turn and roll that corner so that it mimics the other side. And see how that just went on there? So if it's like this, a little bit over, push it down onto that comb, and it's perfect. Now that we've reached this other corner, let's release the veil from the fishing line. Try not to cut your invisible thread. We can just pull it off. And now we haven't finished this corner here, so what I'm going to do to mimic the other side is I'm just going to roll that over slightly. Make sure that they're both about the same on both sides, which they are, and I'm going to sew that in place. And now we're ready to do a little beading application. All right, to just kind of give it a little bit of a finish on the edge so I don't have to do a ton of beading, I have these little netting laces. Any little netting lace will work that I've been nibbling on, and I'm just going to use a little edge here to just kind of go over the edge of this just slightly right there, and I'm going to cut it off. And I just put a nice bead of glue. It's kind of smeared around, and then apply that little piece of netting lace. And where it's on the top here, I just kind of pinch it down, add a little bit more glue up there, and then I just kind of pinch that all down, like sandwiching it together. And you can stop right there. It's so pretty, just like it is. But we're just going to throw in a few seed beads to kind of finish it off. Okay, first I anchor it. When I'm doing beading, I always, on that first one, I anchor it twice. And now is a great time, and then I go back up, and now is a great time to check that corner up here to make sure it's still rolling forward, and it is. And we're going to do 3 beads, and we're going to weave 3 bead strands over and over again to make a really beautiful pattern. It's kind of a weaving pattern. You can even do 4. You could do a strand of 6. The longer the strand of beads, the more weavy it looks. All right, I think you get the idea. We're just kind of weaving them around, creating a nice finish on the edge. And we reach the other end, and so this is when I'm going to really make sure that that's turned in so that we match the other side. And then I'm going to finish that beading up right there. Here we are at the end. I'm going to lock the stitch. Beautiful. There's your little flyaway. Wasn't that fun? It's simple, it's easy. These are really adorable little veils that just make a small impact and kind of give you that nice bridal feel in that summer wedding and that cute little dress. I just love a flyaway veil. And if you would like to put a little fascinator with this veil, which is the perfect complement, check out my playlist, Fascinated by Fascinators, and you can create a little accessory to go with your flyaway veil. See you later, veil makers.